Hello, Year 8, and this week in maths we are going to be continuing looking at fractions, and in today's lesson we are going to be looking at how we multiply two or three fractions together, and possibly how we multiply with improper fractions or mixed numbers. Okay, so a little activity to get your brains awake first. What I would like you to do is look at this maze. It says move from start to finish, adding together the numbers you meet. What is the highest total you can find? What is the lowest total you can find? So I would suggest you pause the video here. You have perhaps 1 or 2 minutes looking at this, and then I will tell you what I have found. So in terms of the highest total, I've managed to find 19. If you think you've found a total that's bigger than 19, by all means, tell me what total you've got and show me which pathway you took in the Ask the Teacher channel. The smallest total that I have found so far is 15. Just one little top tip that I noticed, all of the grey numbers are 1. So regardless of which pathway you take, you're always going to go through the same number of grey numbers. There's 4 of those, so you're always going to be adding 4. So in terms of trying to get the lowest total and the highest total, it's trying to maximize the numbers in the orange circles. So I hope you've managed to print out this sheet, but do not panic if you are in a position where you can't print things out. It just means you will have to do a little bit more writing than most. A tiny bit of feedback from some of the work that I've seen so far from 1 or 2 students. Sometimes your work isn't exactly matching what is in my video, which is quite strange since the fact that I'm showing you how to set out the work, I'm going through each of these answers, and then I see photographic evidence of something that looks very different. So for 1 or 2 of you, can we do a better job at writing down our work starting from this week? That also applies to how you are setting your work out when you are doing the individual questions. I'm providing answers for you to check your work. I would be worried if the amount of working out that I'm doing as a teacher is greater than the amount of work that you are showing. So please have a look at my answers. Please use them sensibly, but always ask yourself, if Mr. Butterworth has written down more in his answer, then why have you written less? So we are looking at multiplying fractions today. And the way that we're going to do this is using a very, very simple method. To multiply 2 fractions together, we multiply the numerators and we multiply the denominators. That is it. We multiply the top numbers, we multiply the bottom numbers. In some ways, this is so much easier than the addition and subtraction of fractions because we do not need a common denominator. Now, when you've done that multiplication, you'll probably end up with a fraction that cancels. So you can cancel a fraction at the end, or I'm going to show you a more clever approach where you do the cancelling before you multiply. And we'll see why that is beneficial in a moment. So, for example, if I was doing 2/3 times 3/4, I could multiply these top 2 numbers together and I would get 6/12. 2 times 3 is 6 and 3 times 4 is 12. And obviously 6/12 cancels to 1/2. Now, as you heard me say, you can do some cancelling before you actually multiply. And let me explain that. I'm just going to rub this out. If you want to cancel before you multiply, you have to look at your numerators and look at your denominators for any common factors. And I can see on numerators I'm doing 2 times 3, but on the bottom I'm doing 3 times 4. Well, there is a numerator that is a 3 and a denominator that is 3. So I can divide those both by 3 before I do my multiplication. And I understand why some people don't like this method, because maybe it looks a little bit messy with this crossing out, but you'll see it makes things a lot easier. You'll also notice there's some other cancelling that I can do, and I'll use a different colour for this, because 2 and 4 are also in the 2 times table, so I can divide both of those by 2. So the 2 becomes 1, and the 4 becomes 2. And what that means is this multiplication is going to be a lot easier, because I only have to do 1 times 1 and 1 times 2. So I get the same answer of a half, but I get there straight away because I've done the cancelling before the multiplication. Now you might say, oh, I'll just cancel it at the end. And that is fine, but you will see in my later examples, the numbers are going to get very large, and cancelling at the end will be more painful because you're going to have to try and spot, well, what can I divide these numbers by? When you're looking at much smaller numbers, it's easier to spot those cancellations. So let's look at my second example, and we'll see if we can spot anything that cancels. Now remember, you have to cancel a numerator with a denominator. So I can't say 6 and 3 are both in the 3 times table, I'll cancel those, because they're both numerators. It has to be a numerator with a denominator. And I can see, well, 6 and 4 are both in the 2 times table, so I'm going to divide both of those numbers by 2. 3 and 2. There is no more cancelling that I can do on this question, so I am ready to multiply. 3 times 3 is 9, and 7 times 2 is 14. And if you can do it, I would perhaps use some different colours to show your cancelling. Don't cross out the numbers so much that you can't read them. Just a nice little line through on what you're replacing it with. So let's look at my next example, and this is what I'm talking about. 9 times 5 I can do, it's 45, but some of you really aren't going to be wanting to do 15 times 12 and then try and cancel that answer as a fraction. I think it's 45 over 180. You're not going to want to be messing around with numbers that size when you can see some numbers in the 5 times table. So I'm going to divide both of these by 5. I'll use my purple pen for this one. So that is 1, 5, and that is 3 5s. Now at this stage there's a little bit of cancelling that I could do, and you might spot different cancelling. As long as you're cancelling a top with a bottom, it doesn't matter which one you do. So you might say, 9 with 3. I'm going to do the 9 with 12. They are both in the 3 times table. So I'm going to swap that one with a 3. 3 3s, and this one is 4 3s. I can now cancel the numbers that I've already reduced it to. So don't worry if you're cancelling numbers further. I can divide them both by 3. And straight away I get the answer to this one as being 1/4. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 4 is 4. Now this process also works with 3 fractions and more if you want to. However, you only ever divide one numerator with one denominator. So you can't cancel the 2, the 22 and the 8 because that would be cancelling 2 numbers with 1. So always do it one step at a time. So I can see I've got some numbers in the 11 times table. So I'm going to divide that by 11 and that by 11. I can see I've got some numbers in the 5 times table. So I'm going to divide this by 5 to get 1 and this by 5 to get 7. I can now see I've got some numbers in the 2 times table. So I'm going to cancel the 2 with the 8. That is 1 2, that is 4 2s. And I've still got some further fractions that I can cancel, because I can now cancel this 2 with this 4. So that would be 1, and that would be 2. And if you now look at my question, all I'm multiplying together on my numerators is 1, 1, and 1, which is 1. And my denominators is 14. And you see, by doing it this way, I have not had to multiply 11, 35, and 8, which would have been very difficult. So we can also apply this to mixed numbers, and we're going to use very much the same method as we would for addition and subtraction by turning the mixed numbers into improper fractions first. All good practice. And again, if I get some answers that are improper fractions, I will turn those back to mixed numbers. So in my first further example, I have 3.5 times 2 2/7. So the first step is turn 3.5 into an improper fraction. Well, that one is 7 halves, and 2 2/7 would be 16 sevenths. Can we see any cancelling that can be done there? Well, I can sort out those 7s straight away, because they both divide by 7, so I can replace those with 1s. Is there something I can do with 16 and 2? Yes, I can divide both of those by 2. And if I divide both of those by 2, I will have 8 here and 1 here. So I get quite an interesting answer when I multiply this together, because I get 1 times 8, which is 8. And on my bottom, I have 1 times 1, which is 1. So I have 8 over 1. That just means 8 whole ones. 8 divided by 1 is 8. And sometimes it can be a nice idea to write a number of whole ones as something over 1, which you might see in some questions later on today. Very interesting that you have two fractions multiplying together and you actually end up with a whole number. Let's look at this final example. 2 2/9 times 2 1/10. Let's start by turning them into improper fractions. So this first one would be 20 ninths. Each whole one is 9 ninths, so 2 whole ones is 18 ninths, 2 more, 20 ninths. 2 1/10, well, each whole one is 10 tenths, so that one is 21 tenths. So I hope you can see some cancelling here. Both of those in the 10 times table, so I'll divide both of those by 10. You might have also spotted that 21 and 9 are both in the 3 times table. So that is 7 3s and that is 3 3s. That is all the cancelling that I can do. So 2 times 7 is 14 and 3 times 1 is 3. So I end up with 14 thirds. Well, 3 goes into 14 4 times with 2 left over. So that, as a mixed number, is 4 2/3. Now, it might be when you do some questions today, you do not see all of the cancelling that you can do. So it might be that you end up with an answer at the end, which does cancel a little bit further. So do always look at your answer at the end and think, can I cancel that any further? So there are some questions to try. We've got some level 1, some level 2, and some level 3 questions, and all of the answers have been provided for in my PowerPoint. So think about how I have set these questions out today. Think about the working out that I have shown. When you are doing these questions in your book, I would be expecting to see the same amount of working out. Remember to check your answers, mark with a different coloured pen. Make any corrections if you get something wrong. If you get something wrong and you're not sure why, ask in the Ask the Teacher channel. Only once you've done all of that should you be taking the photos of your work for your teacher. So, as always, any problems, ask in the Ask the Teacher channel and see how you get on.